So, good morning and welcome to Adma Unplugged. I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by David Sable, who is the Global CEO of Y&R, who's joining us all the way from New York City. So, welcome, Dave.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. And how come you're not upside down? I thought in Australia, it's sort of like the other way around. I don't know. It's amazing. Modern technology. I love it.
We think of ourselves as being on top of the world.
There you are. And you are, in fact. You absolutely are. My favorite place to visit.
Ah, there we are. So we'll get you over here soon, hopefully.
You will actually. We're working on it.
We're here to talk about Cannes, and obviously you were the chairman of judges for creative effectiveness this year, which is quite an honour. And just to hear about some of the work that you saw, your viewpoints on where Cannes is going, and obviously pointing out some of the great campaigns that you saw coming through. So to start off with, what really struck me this year at Cannes, and I think it's been a trend for probably the last 2 or 3 years, we're really seeing a lot of tech players and a lot of conversations around data coming into Cannes, which has previously been so kind of purist around creativity. So what's your viewpoint on that? Should it stay purely creative, or does now technology and data play an absolutely central role in Cannes and in creativity?
So I think, first of all, the question is what's creative and what's not? And what's innovation, which is another term that you hear a lot about in Cannes. So I'll just start with this notion of, this is our definition, this is my definition. To me, creative is the story. Innovation is how I deliver the story. Now, there's a lot of other innovation in the world, don't get me wrong. You can be innovative around shoes, you can be innovative around glasses, a lot of things you can be innovative around hunger. But in our industry, innovation specifically refers to, in my opinion, how you get the story out. So if you look at Facebook, if you look at Twitter, if you look at Pinterest, look at names, those are innovations that work because they get your story out. But you still need a story to go into it. You still need creative. You have to have content. You have to have something that people relate to that is important. So yes, I think it's very important that those people be there. Because it does add to the story. It adds to your ability to create the story, and it also adds to your ability to distribute the story. But I think that what's really critical is this year we saw a switch in the way technology was looked at. So first of all, I could talk about this for hours, but I'll just give you the quick. None of this is really technology. It's applied technology, number one. Number two, really what you're talking about are channels of distribution. So Google, Facebook, AOL, Microsoft, what they're all, and Twitter, by the way, they were all running seminars on storytelling this year because they're dying for content. They're dying for creativity. They're dying for stuff to fill, their ability to communicate with others. So, but what you did see this year was, if you go back 4 or 5 years, technology alone could win you a lion. So in other words, you could come in with the crappiest creative, the worst idea, but you used Facebook or Twitter or something that nobody had actually used before or people hadn't used in a particular way. And even though what you did was completely irrelevant, you could possibly win. In fact, some did. I won't tell you who because it would sort of not be fair. But you could win. What we saw this year was technology was completely transparent. And you heard this across all the juries. You heard this from the jury chairman. You heard it from the people on the jury. You heard it from everybody. People were not, technology is a given, right? Or it's all a given. We live in a world that's digital. So all of these things are givens. You no longer win because you've used technology. Everything uses technology. So you won because you had a great idea. And they all use technology. Some of them better than others, some of them in different ways than others. But the idea won as much as the technology.
But do you believe in the creative community, a large proportion of which is represented over in Khan, do you believe that they're embracing data and technology, or do you think we've still got a long way to go?
I think they have no choice. I don't think it's a question of embracing anymore. You know, I was saying that digital is everything, but not everything is digital. So, in other words, today, even if you produce an ad for a newspaper, it has a digital basis to it. But the output might not be digital. I use Waze, which is a digital application, but my reason for using it, my need for it, is completely not digital. So digital is the basis for everything, but not everything is digital, because we still go to restaurants, we go to movies, we go to stores, retail is doing well. So I think it's not a question of embracing it. You have no choice. It is. It is. If you don't understand that, then it's really hard to make it in this world today, I have to tell you. And I think it's impossible to make it in our industry. So my sense is yes. They have embraced it, some of them because they jumped into it and they loved it, others because they had no choice. But everybody understands and at least talks the talk if they can't yet walk the walk. Now, data is a little bit different, because it's not clear that data in and of itself is necessary for the creative to know. The output of the data is, though, because the output of the data very often gives you new insight. And so that insight is critical. Now, where the data becomes important is when I'm serving you, I'm serving you dynamic ads that change because of what you do. But the truth is that kind of creative is more programmatic anyways. So the data in and of itself is irrelevant to the final creation. It's only relevant in the way it delivers the story. Where data plays a very important role is in insight, and that insight should lead you to better creative.
What are some of the other key themes that you saw coming through in the submissions and the campaigns that were put forward this year, even if there were trends that you've seen in previous years, or something completely new that you started seeing coming through in advertising over the past year and through the Cannes submission?
Okay, so what I've been talking a lot about, and what I think is true and what we've seen, number one is simplicity. I think we have a return to the beauty of simplicity. People are telling stories. The stories are tied to brands or products or services. They can be funny, they can be charming, they can be sad, they're engaging, but they're simple. And I think that when we look back 5 years ago, the number of convoluted entries that we saw, and many of which were awarded, by the way, again, because of this notion of the technology. Somehow people thought because they use technology, the idea has to be complicated and convoluted. So we're going back to simplicity. That's number one, and I think that's critical. Number two, clearly, storytelling is back at the center of everything that we do. And again, as I said, I think it's instructive and important to understand that all of the digital greats there were running seminars on storytelling. So simplicity, stories, and again, the simplicity comes back to also the use of the technology. As I said, transparent technology. The use of technology was completely transparent. The story wasn't about the technology. The story is about what happens. It's about the story itself. So, for example, there's a beautiful piece that won a number of medals, including, I believe, a Golden Direct, which was for an outdoor digital billboard. I believe it was in Piccadilly in London. It was done by Ogilvy for British Air. It's fabulous. It's absolutely fabulous. And essentially what happens is this huge digital billboard right over the center of the square. And it has some BA advertising, and every once in a while it changes, and there's just a kid on a white background pointing up into the air. And if you follow the kid's finger, you actually see a jet flying over, and then it says BA flight, blah, 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 to Singapore, or whatever. It's fabulous. Now, the story behind the technology is great. There are transponders and receivers, and there's a software program, but it's irrelevant to this story. It's relevant, obviously. Without that, they couldn't have done it. But it's so simple. It's beautiful. It's fabulous. And the technology is totally transparent. So to me, that's the kind of stuff we were seeing. That's the kind of stuff that we love.
Obviously, you saw all of the campaigns that came through the creative effectiveness category. Were there any in there that you felt were underrated, so should have been given more prominence or accolade, but actually weren't?
No, I'm proud that that our jury did an amazing job. One of the things that we agreed on as a jury going in is a very, very tight definition that had been created early on when they first started this category by the Cannes administration of what effectiveness was, and it's really about advertising that influences, that changes people's hearts and minds, that drives business, that creates profit, and it's very clear. It's what if you were a client, it's what you would hope that they would measure, without a doubt. It's exactly what you would hope that they would measure. And so we said, okay, that's our base. We're starting with that. The second thing that was important to us was we felt, you've been in the room at Cannes when people have won, and it happens every once in a while. People walk out shaking their heads saying, what the hell was that jury thinking? Where did that work come from? It was terrible. And we decided that we didn't want any of that. We were not going to allow that to happen. I just went dead here. All right, here I am. Sorry. We decided that we wouldn't let that happen. We decided that that could not happen, that would not be, that any decision that we made would have to be one that not only were we proud of, but we could stand behind. We wanted work that we felt was real and scalable. So if it was a great result, it was kind of too small, so you knew that if I got that result in one square city block, it would be great, but there was no way I could ever replicate it, that we didn't think that was really creative effectiveness. So we had very specific criteria that we applied. And I think that we were proud of our choices. We thought all the work was interesting, but I have to tell you, I would say that, and we saw this across all the categories, by the way, not just in what came into the creative effectiveness, probably 70% of the entries began with, for the first time ever, digital technology was used to do X, or never before in the history of mankind has a social marketing program through digital channels been used in quite this way. One of my favorites. We knew we had to find a solution that wasn't traditional. So those we kind of immediately put to the side. It amazes me how many people would tell you how viral their work was. And so clearly you realize as the way it was written that was really the point, was to make it viral and big. But their marketing area was actually quite small. And they had trouble really telling you what the results were, but they were very happy to tell you that they got millions of views across the world. Well, that's great, except you only sell your product in Milan. So tell me how that helped you. So at the end of the day, I think we picked work that we were proud of, work that we felt was fabulous, work that we felt would inspire people.
Taking that into account, I think that's a really good, some good advice there for people who are looking to put their entries in for next year. What are the top three? So if you're going to pick three things that the judges really look for, so one is you're saying it has to be something that's scalable, that others can actually pick up on and use those techniques themselves. What are the other types of things that you will look for as a set of judges that makes an entry stand out from another entry?
So I'm going to talk now only about the effectiveness jury. So, and then I can answer it on other juries afterwards. But on the effectiveness jury, I think that the thing that we were looking for, we assumed, so you know how the effectiveness works, which is that you had to have won a Lion the year before or have been on the short list. So you had to have accumulated points one way or another. So short list or actually won a Lion. So we decided, like, if that had already been decided, our job wasn't to judge the creativity, which is, much more of a subjective view. Our job was to judge effectiveness, which is a little bit more objective. So to judge the effectiveness, which is more objective. And the truth of the matter is we could have debated the creativity of every one of these. But we assumed, okay, our peers last year said these are creative. They won, so they're creative, right? What we looked for were people who had an insight, who understood there was a client problem I had to solve, whatever that problem was, and they defined that problem well. They had an insight. That insight then was based on the target. It was based on how to motivate that target, and it tied back to the business problem. The solution that they found, the creative, i.e. the story that they put around it, the innovation, the use of channels, the use of getting the story out, the activation, and a business model all tied together that drove very clear results. That is what we looked for. So, for example, you had some work, and you'd read it and say, wow, this is pretty good. Look what these guys did. Look how the business rose during that period. But then when you got to the bottom of the submission, there's one paragraph where you're asked to tell you what else was happening in the market. You discover that they discounted all their product during that period 80%. Well, hello, what does that have? How do we know what drove the sales? Was it your work or was it the discounts of 80%? So work like that was immediately discounted. So you have to have clear definition of the client need, clear definition of the insight linked brilliantly to the story, and the activation and the motivation, all of it driving to a sale.
All the campaigns that you saw, what were the 2 or 3 that absolutely stuck in your mind that you would say, that they really either inspired me or impressed me, or that they were standout?
Well, obviously the award that we gave the Grand Prix for was V-Lines, and it was really interesting. On the one hand, it's small. It's from Melbourne. It's for one train line. On the other hand, the idea we think is so big that I swear to you, all the judges talked about creating a company to take that idea and sell it to every transportation company around the world. That's how big we felt the idea was, and just how simply brilliant it was. So for those of you who don't know the case, and I imagine in your country everybody should know it, but it's just a beautiful story, right? It's how do I fill up seats on the train from Melbourne out to the burbs, out to the suburbs, out to the outlying areas where the kids have gone from those places into the big city, right? So they're not coming home as much, not as interesting, it's boring, whatever it is. How do I fill those seats during non-peak times? How do I engage people? And how do I make it sound exciting and fun? And it was brilliant. I mean, the brilliant insight is that you guilt your kid into coming home, right? Your kid left, he's in the big city. Make him feel guilty and tell him to come back and send him a ticket. The beauty of this story is the insight is universal, number one. Number two, they used every channel possible. They used print, they used direct mail, they used outdoor, they used digital, obviously. There's no radio, there's no channel that they didn't use, and they didn't make excuses for using any of those channels. They used them all. And in their submission, they don't say, we were looking for a non-traditional way of communicating this. On the contrary, they said, we used everything we could. And clearly, some of the people they're talking to are older and not the parents, and not necessarily quite as digital, although they did this wonderful, wonderful set of videos with a little book that went with it that came by direct mail to teach the parents how to do these little videos and upload. They're hysterical, and they got great results. That was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. We think that it was written like a Harvard Business Review case, and you can find it on the CAN website. I recommend that everybody look at the case and read it if you want to know how to submit a great case, right? But put that aside. I just think it's just a beautiful work. It inspired me tremendously. So I think that to me was really, I think to all of us on the jury, that was really just one of the great pieces of work in the effectiveness category that just worked beautifully.
Australian work, because we're always interested in how other countries, and particularly at awards festivals, how the Australian work is perceived. And obviously this year we did have, last year was a huge year for Australia with Dumb Ways to Die, and this year we had the Brad Pitt Bro, and also Guilt Trips, which was McCann. So how did you see the Australian work coming through? Was it great quality work? What was your viewpoint on it?
I thought it was great. I mean, look, obviously I was chairman of the president of the jury that awarded you a Grand Prix. So yeah, we thought that work was great. We looked at the Brad Pitt work. That was also in the effectiveness jury. We thought the work was good. It definitely was good. It was funny as hell. I think it was a great insight. Was really wonderful. It was deserving to be on the short list as it was. So I think that was great work. So yeah, I mean, I think there's great work coming out of Australia. Look, my agency, we've won over the years multiple. We won this year too. We win, and we're proud. I think my agencies in Sydney and Melbourne and Brisbane and New Zealand are some of my most creative agencies in the world. And the work that comes out of there, we started before you and I talking about our VML office and our advertising. I think the confluence of the two makes me proud. And I think that there's a sensibility of work coming out of Australia that it's not self-conscious. It's not self-conscious about technology. It's not self-conscious about use of media and channel. It's just kind of fun and exuberant and full of life. And so I think it's great. Inspires me. Makes me want to come visit again as soon as I can.
Two more kind of lines of questioning. First of all, what I noticed is there was an awful lot of social advertising, so advertising for social good, and a lot of that type of work being awarded at Cannes. So if you looked at something like Sweetie, which was, really was quite groundbreaking in the territory that it looked at, there was quite simplistic campaigns that won. So something like Share My Data took a very kind of simple idea, executed it beautifully, and obviously won. So are you seeing more of that coming through, this idea of advertising for social good? And is it something that you think consumers are demanding from us now?
So that's an interesting question. There's two pieces to that, and we as a jury, we wrestled with that. There's advertising for social good, like Sweetie. It has nothing to do with the brand. It's actually focused on a major, big problem. And work like that is really interesting. That particular piece is not just interesting, it's powerful. And it could be game-changing in the world, frankly. So that's one set of work. The second set of work is work that's done for a brand, where the brand does some social good. And that's some of the stuff that Bono was talking about. It's tying in with Red. It's doing some other social good, but it's tied into your brand. Now, in that case, there's two aspects to it. And again, this was something we discussed as a group. There's one aspect where the brand is very open and transparent about tying into that particular social cause because they want to do some good, but also because they do believe it'll drive their business. And that's fine. In fact, it's better than fine, because if you're honest and transparent about it, the reason that you brand, can give the money, can afford to do this, is because you're selling product. So if you sell more product and then you give that profit, or however you've worked it out, to that social cause, that's a good thing. We saw a number of brands who were doing that kind of work and then professed to do it completely altruistically for zero. They wanted nothing back for it. It just didn't ring true. I think the other piece that very often happens is there are entries, and can always, from agencies, and we all do it, and we've all done it. You want to do good, you want to do great work, and you do it. And it's wonderful that the agencies do that work, and it's wonderful that the agencies support those causes and give the work for free. And there's a category for that. There's a category at the end for that, the line for good. There's also specific categories in a lot of the different juries just for charities and such. I think very often what happens, and it happened this year in a number of the juries, that work, from a creative point of view, that work is very often easier, if you will, to push the bounds of creativity, because the people very often get the work for free, so they're happy to take the work, and it's easier for the agencies to get that kind of work through. And we saw some really good commercial work get knocked out by that kind of work, and that's sort of, we don't think that that's right. And on our jury, we decided to put that aside, and I understand there were 2 other juries actually who did the same thing. So we made a differentiation between work that was purely done for nonprofits by agencies, great work, and we wanted to award it, and we did, versus work that a brand did that was really commercial, but was commercial in a way that helped a social cause. So I think that people want to see their brands attached to social causes. I think people like to support social causes. But I think that, and they've always been very powerful tools that can. Some of the best work has always been from the nonprofits and from the social, from the social good. But I do believe that you have to look at that work in different ways.
Quoted as saying that your favourite advertisement of all time is a 1908 newspaper ad for Ernest Shackleton. So tell me about that. Why is that? Is that true, first of all? And why, if it is true, why is that your favourite ad?
In a way, it is true. I mean, the truth is, I have said that from the from the main stage at Cannes a number of times. I think the thing about it that was so brilliant, it's basically one line where Shackleton had put a wanted ad in the papers looking for people to join him on this journey, and you might die, but you're going to have fame no matter what. And so if that's what you wanted, this was the thing to be. It was brilliant. It was brilliant. Like, you read this one line, and in your head, you created this story. You saw the howling winds. You saw the expanse of ice. You saw the dogs. You saw the sleds. It was unbelievable. From one line, I created a story, or he created a story in my head. And I imagine the heads of everybody read. So I love that, because it's just one of the best written lines. So yes, that is absolutely one of my favorite. Everybody should look it up. It is just one of the absolute best advertisements of all time. One line creates an entire adventure, movie, novel, digital extravaganza in your head. Other than that, amongst my most favorite, 1984, the famous Apple ad. I've had occasion over the past year to get to know John Scully, and I love John. He's just an amazing human being, and talk to him about what he was thinking about when he did that and how they developed it. But I do believe that was a game change in the industry. I think it's just an amazing piece of communication. Another one, which, by the way, I think is in the same vein, and really took its inspiration from 1984, when Apple launched the iPhone, at least in the U.S. I don't know if you saw the same commercial in Australia, but they used the occasion of the Academy Awards, and they ran a commercial, much like they did 1984 in the Super Bowl many years before. And everybody knew that Apple was going to have this phone, all the rumors, but this is the first time they told you. And this is what the commercial was. It was clips from Academy Award-winning movies of people going, hello, 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 hello. That's all it was. And you had, I don't know, 60 seconds of people going, hello, 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 hello. And it ended, iPhone from Apple coming soon or whatever. And again, I have to tell you, I don't know anybody who saw it who didn't conjure up in their minds all kinds of visions of what this phone must be. They told you the story. They told you exactly what, they didn't show you anything, but they so ignited your imagination that it was fabulous. So that to me is similar to 1984. It kind of gets you to that. It kind of gets you to that place, and I think that it's beautiful. Another one of my absolute favorites, because again, it's about the story. It's about the engagement of the story. And this is a Young and Rubicam advertising ad. It goes back to the 70s. Was the famous Lay's potato chip, Bet You Can't Eat Just One. Bert Lahr, who was the lion in the Wizard of Oz, and others, just on a simple white background, much like I'm behind, just holding the bag. And it's just amazing. Absolutely amazing. So I think that, to me, those are my favorite advertisements. Simple, that ignite your imagination. I don't want to be told the whole story. I don't need to have fireworks and digital extravaganzas and all kinds of stuff. Tell me the story. Inspire me, motivate me, make me laugh, make me cry. Ignite my imagination. That's what I want to have.
I think it comes back to one of the very first points you make is around simplicity. Make it simple. It's the simple things that actually do stick in your mind, whether it's 1984 or 1908. it's those that stick in your mind. So last question for you. Where do you see this all going? I mean, we hear every day, and there's commentary every day about marketing and advertising getting more complex, and tech and data, and it's all kind of coming together in this huge kind of like explosion. Where do you see it going? What would you say the kind of key things that we're going to see in the next 2 to 3 years that are going to define the next phase of advertising?
So I knew the full answer. I'd have my Gulf private jet ready to come visit you right after this call. However, as cloudy as my crystal ball might be, I think one of the interesting things that's happening, you see, when we talk about the complexity, we're talking about the technology. And as I said, the technology is becoming transparent. So I think the complexity is going away, because the closer we get, the more we learn, the more we understand the use of the technology, if you will, of the innovation, the easier it is to get back to the simplicity of the story and the marketing, which hasn't changed. People still want to be marketed to. The basic principles haven't changed. What's changed is we've fragmented channels. We have way more data. We have way too much data. I use a term called digibabble. So digibabble, if you go to wired.com, you can see all my terms. But digibabble is just this language that we speak around digital that's just such nonsense. It just recomplicates the whole thing. It's like never before seen, never before done. Nobody's ever had an experience before. Like, we've never had experience. We've never created experiential advertising before until digital. It's just not true. It's just not true. So I think that what we're going to see, and what we are seeing, is a return to looking at the person, to looking at the customer. to looking at the consumer. Advertising has to start with people. It doesn't start with technology. And I think that where we took a left turn is when we got so consumed by the technology that we complicated our lives thinking that the technology was the answer. But it's not. It's an enabler. So as we learn how to use these enablers better, we learn because we're watching the consumer. We've got our eye back on what people are doing. And by the way, people are out in the streets. People are going to restaurants, and they're buying in stores, and they're buying online, and they're buying in stores, and they're buying online. And they go to movies, and they download other movies and watch them, and they get together with their friends and watch the World Cup on huge television sets in groups of people. Like, how many people do you know sat in a corner with earplugs in, watching the World Cup on a small smartphone when they could have been watching on a big screen with a bunch of people around? None. Now, it's not to say that there weren't people who were stuck someplace or on a train or whatever who did it that way. Absolutely, yes. But that was because it was expedient, not because they wanted to do it. So I think that, to me, the biggest trend, the biggest change is going to be this return to looking for insight, looking at the human, understanding the data at the end of the day is only as good as my understanding of the data. Big data is irrelevant if I don't get it. It's just gunking up servers if I'm not looking at it. So it's all about people, which is what advertising has always been about. It's what storytelling has always been about. And so because of that, I'm excited because I think we're at the right place at the right time.
So thank you so much for joining me today. We are out of time, but it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I could talk to you for hours about this. So again, thank you from us here in Australia. We hope to see you here soon, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
My pleasure. Thank you.